Access Fort Wayne offers reflections of our community. Production facilities provided by Access Fort Wayne are a service of the Allen County Public Library. The views and opinions expressed do not necessarily represent those of Access Fort Wayne, the Allen County Public Library, or any other supporting organizations. For more information about creating your own television program with Access Fort Wayne, call 421-1250.
Washington is the street going out. Take me back to 6924.
Hello and welcome to the American Veteran. I'm Dale Parrish, your host. Our co-host is Carl Fowler. Also joining us this morning is Don Thurr. He's a World War II veteran that was in Normandy. He will be on our later show. Our guest today is Chuck Layton. He's a Korean War veteran. He has some interesting stories to tell. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Chuck. You got a lot to talk about. Let's just start right out. When was you in Korea?
What did I do in Korea?
No, when did you get to Korea?
In 1951.
51.
Yeah.
And you was right away assigned to?
Well, I was on detached service between the 2nd and the 7th Division as a forward observer.
I see.
And that covered a lot of territory back then because we were in the mountainous area, and it was rocky, hilly, and tons of snow in the wintertime and boiling heat in the summer.
Yeah. You was over in the western sector of North Korea.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Doing a lot of moving around then, wasn't it?
Constantly, yes, constantly, because there was never any lines like I have heard about the Second World War. There was no lines. It just kept moving back and forth, up and down, around and about, constantly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You was captured.
I beg your pardon?
You were captured by how many of you?
There was a total of 37.
37.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how did that come about?
Well, we knew that there was being a large buildup of the enemy, and we were preparing for it, and there was 2 battalions on the flank, and they got overrun because they just threw masses of bodies at them over and over and over again. Once they got behind them, they started taking our heavy equipment and making it malfunction. And then we were ducking and dodging and trying to find a place to hide. And then as night fell, I went into the craggy mountains and thought I could be safe in there. But the next day, they sent out patrols and they looked in every nook and cranny, and 37 of us from all different units were captured. 2 being from the French organization. So they marched us for 2.5 hours, and we finally ended up in a small compound that had a mud building that was 18 by 36 interior, and that's where 37 of us stayed with no heat and not very good vegetation to eat, and there was no windows, so we were in the dark almost the entire time.
Oh, geez. Yeah. That was in what month?
Well, it was in early November.
Early November.
Yeah. And then December. It was 17 weeks, and we had planned our escape for the 18th week. But what they did, and we started watching, that about every 3 weeks they bought booze and women to the compound, and of course for the enjoyment of the guards and things like that. And it seemed to be kind of an R&R situation for some of their fighting soldiers, and they would go back and forth, but the guards stayed with us, and they were armed, of course.
Yeah.
But then we would notice that as they would come on duty, they would be intoxicated and worn out because of the women. So we got the idea about the 9th week that maybe we could play that situation to our advantage.
Yeah. Okay, was this North Koreans now or the
Yeah,
Chinese?
we were in North Korea.
Oh, I mean, North Korean troops or Chinese
Oh,
troops?
no, North Korean groups.
Okay.
I think the Chinese would have been more structured from things I have heard, but ours were Korean, and it was like they took young boys, put them in a soldier's uniform, gave them a weapon, and said, guard these guys.
Yeah.
So as time went on, we just kept watching and watching and watching, because the only time they took us outside was to either count us, and that got sour real quickly, or to beat us. And so we couldn't get a good view of exactly where we were, but we could hear artillery in the distance, and we got a direction from it. And every time we went outside, we looked as best we could. However, one of the things that they did was they grabbed you by the hair and made you be in a submissive position, take you outside, and that way you couldn't get your head up. And the girls used to like to kick us in the groin and just whatever they could just mess with you.
Yeah.
Make life miserable, right?
I beg your pardon?
They make life miserable for you.
Yeah, make life miserable. And as best my memory tells me, and that's 60 years of memory, we only missed 8 days of not getting anything to eat. However, what they gave us was slop, but it was full of moisture. And you can live longer if you got moisture in your body than you could with food.
Dry food.
And we tried to determine, sometimes it smelled like garlic, sometimes it smelled like fish, sometimes it tasted like cabbage. You know, we never knew. But you never knew when they were going to bust through the door, because there was no way that we could plan how many days. You had to just mentally try to do that. And some of the guys would say, I wonder if it's Christmas yet, you know, or things like that. But since the timetable was so disrupted, we just never knew anything. And I was a sergeant, but even when we were out and free, sergeant never got to see the big picture. I mean, we were executing duties, and then and you didn't wear stripes because nobody saluted when you were over there, because that would identify rank. So you failed from doing that because it wouldn't be in your best interest.
Yeah. Yeah. The cold weather hit you then.
Well, we couldn't record it, of course, but it was as close to 50 degrees below zero, and there was no heat that they gave us. However, they made one big mistake, and that is when they would finish a rice sack, they would throw it in our hooch. They were string tied on the outside, and we would take the string and save it, because some of the smaller Koreans would take some of the smaller GI's boots. So we had to wrap their feet in these rice sacks and tie them on with string.
Okay.
Yeah.
You was able to keep your jackets and...
Yeah, they didn't take them because they, you know, our sizes were so much bigger than theirs.
Yeah.
And that was another aid in us being able to handle that, because I was 6'1" at the time, and I'm going to think the average Korean young man was probably 5'8" to 5'9". So we had a height advantage, and that made a difference near the end.
Did you have those heavy overcoats or just field jackets?
Well, we had the long parka. It was not as
you
long
did-
as,
you
not
did
an
have-
overcoat,
okay.
but we had the long parka with
Okay.
that was a hood.
Because I understand over on the eastern sector they didn't have parkas.
No, they had the longer coat,
Yeah.
and then of course the Marines got Mickey Mouse boots, and we got shoe packs, and the shoe packs were as dangerous with the cold weather as just having regular boots on, because if your feet perspired, you were sunk because the felt would get wet.
Yeah.
And then when you would have to stop, and at that temperature, you were destined to get frostbite.
Yeah, the Marines we talked to, I think they had shoe packs.
Did they have shoe bags?
Yeah.
A lot of them got the
Shoe
Mickey
bags,
Mouse boot.
Did they?
Yeah, and that was the air between
Right.
the sole
that
and
was-
the.
that
Yeah.
was-
That's what we got later on in
Yeah.
'53.
Well, see, I was out in '52,
Yeah.
and I thought I'd be reassigned, but fortunately, I got sent home for discharge.
So after you escaped, you worked your way south.
Well,
just
what
by
it was,
chance?
we knew where artillery was being fired, so we knew about what direction to go. And we had planned for the 18th week, hoping that the snow would be diminished. However, they fouled us up and they brought the girls and booze in on the 17th week. Well, we had rehearsed this thing so many times that we thought, we can't wait for another time. So we executed what we had planned and headed in a direction that we anticipated would be friendly forces, because we figured as best we could, we were about 18 miles ahead of the line of where Old Baldy and Heartbreak Ridge and all of that was, and we knew that they weren't being shelled because that part of the war was basically over. And as dawn broke, when we escaped, when dawn broke, an L-19 was up, and they were there for observing troop movement and call in artillery strikes if it required it. And they were way, way high in the air. And as they saw this 37-man Caterpillar going through the snow, they got lower and lower. And then we were waving and stuff like that. And they gave us a directional flyover and must have radioed ahead. That's the only thing we can imagine.
Yeah.
And then about an hour and a half, 2 hours later, a squad came out and showed us the way in. And we were a mess, as you can imagine, because they gave us no latrine responsibilities. We never got out of that 18 by 36 building, and it was grass walls and no sanitation whatsoever. So the guys had no choice. You get up at night when they were covered and trying to keep warm, they just had to go in their clothing.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine.
Once you had escaped, I imagine you were pretty happy to get back on the
Well,
friendly side.
yeah, there was a lot of things, but so much anticipation, because we were all from different units, and to find those units was a yeoman's task. I mean, it just took everything because everybody was moving constantly,
So you just had to ask directions, right?
Yeah, well, we had help from the people that helped us out. They were helping us to find units, but fortunately, they gave me an R&R because the guys told them that I was the leader of the escape plan, and so they gave me a 5-day R&R. Like that would cure you from all of that
that'd
thing.
make everything well.
Well, yeah, and
Yeah.
about the only thing I can say about this, we took a shower both night and day.
Did they send you to a MASH unit right after you got back and check you out, or what?
No, I never was debriefed. I was never counseled and anything else. And as I read what's coming out now, those are all foreign terms to us. They just figured you'd self-heal, I guess.
Yeah.
And it didn't work. There were many, many, many times that you had to get alone when you got back stateside.
Flashbacks and so forth.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can understand that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Often I say I can understand that. Yeah.
Yeah.
How-
It it was one of those things where you did what you had to do,
Yeah.
and some of the younger guys, when I say younger, I don't know how much younger because I was 21 and 22, and they were maybe in National Guard. I'm not sure, because when you're in darkness constantly, you don't have a lot of time for camaraderie.
Yeah.
You never know when that door's going to fly open and they're going to take one of you out and mess with you.
Yeah.
So
Now, how did you all escape as a group?
yes,
So you all went out.
yeah, we all went out together.
You was able to get past the guards somehow?
Well, we had the L-19 helped us a tremendous amount because we knew approximately from hearing about which way to go. However, the L-19 gave us a directional that we knew how to go. Now it's snow, it was hilly, up and down, around and about, but you just had to use your ingenuity on pushing forward.
Once you started, you had to keep going.
Had to keep going. There was no turning back because we wouldn't want to, and what they did was about the second day we were caught, the Army came back, the Korean Army came back and tattooed us and with an inkwell and a needle. And there was 37 of us and I ended up with 31. Well, when I went to the MASH hospital after we got, they said, that's got to come off. And I was thinking, why? Well, they said, if you get captured again, and I thought, I'm not leaving here. Yeah. And so MASH hospital, finally, it had to be perfectly dry. MASH hospital, they took me down there and they sanded the skin until they got to the ink. And then once they got the ink out, you couldn't tell that it was a number 31. And then you could only see the redness. But sometime in there, somebody intervened and they told me then that I was going to be sent home.
Okay.
And I thought maybe I'd be able to stop in Hawaii and see the nice beaches of Hawaii. Well,
sure.
We took the north route again,
Yeah.
and that was with the big waves, and I discovered quickly that the Navy wasn't a place for me.
Okay. So you came back to where? Fort Lewis?
No, well, we came in, and they quickly dispatched us, and I ended up in the Chicago area.
I mean, where'd you land on the West Coast?
What coast?
West Coast when you came back.
Oh, yeah. Well,
you flew back then, in other words.
No, we didn't get to fly back. We had to take a boat.
So you either come into Fort
But
Lewis.
I was in gunner's quarters, and there were sheets on the bunks, and we
Oh.
could look out of a porthole, and I thought I had died and gone to heaven.
That's like
because,
first class.
Yeah, first class is right, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but it was one of those things, and I have said many times, and it sounds a bit conceited as I look at it and see it in writing, that I was glad it was me and not somebody else. And that has strange connotations to it, but I just figured after my training and my life prior to going in, I'd figured that I had seen a childhood that was kind of unbelievable. And so I figured that's where I belonged.
It goes along with that old saying, I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy.
Correct, yeah. Yes.
So you have that feeling.
Well, right, yeah.
Yeah, I understand that.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I appreciate it, by the way.
Yeah. The thing about it is that you had to never lose the inner fight. It
Right.
was one of the things that you just had to keep saying and had to say to the other guys, even though there was very little dialogue. You couldn't talk to the French guys. I mean, you could pigeon talk to them.
Yeah.
And you could do a lot of things, but from all the units they were from, it was hard to comprehend.
Different backgrounds.
Oh yeah, oh my,
Very much
yes.
so.
Yeah. See, I came out of the Chicago area, drafted, and other guys were from the East Coast, West Coast, South, Tennessee, all over.
You really didn't have that much in common.
No, no. The only thing we had in common, we were all caught.
You're all caught in the service.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so keeping the spirits up was kind of a tough job, but there was no rah-rah in it because it was kind of hard to muster those kinds of attitudes when you're all scared to death.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned a little L-19, which is a little single-engine spotter plane.
Yeah, wing over.
And you guys walked back, or you said you was in a...
Well, yeah, we walked until they came out to meet us.
Oh, okay.
And then
you
they
rode.
guided us, yeah.
Then they had
Yeah.
a vehicle you could ride in, yeah.
Yeah, they just gave us a flyover,
Okay.
a directional flyover.
Sure.
Yeah.
How long did it take you from the time you escaped until you got back to friendly forces?
From the time we escaped,
Yeah.
it happened all within that 24-hour period.
Oh, did it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we didn't delay any because we put the healthier guys and the stronger guys in front to break down the snow.
Okay.
The guys that were in sack-covered feet and were weaker, they were in the middle. And I brought up the rear because I wanted to make sure that we were not followed. And but we had about a 5-hour head start, but the guards changed.
Okay.
So we took advantage of that and pushed as hard as we could push through the
Yeah.
snow, and
Well,
it worked out well for us.
You had to, because if you wouldn't have pushed hard, they could have followed your
Oh,
tracks
yeah.
in the snow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Was it nighttime that you escaped? Or?
yes,
Okay.
yeah. We went out
Dark.
in the night,
Okay.
and which then we knew about when the guard would change, but see that was also during the period when they were drunk
Yeah.
and had the women available to them, and so we knew that they wouldn't be on their toes particularly. So we tried to take advantage of every possible thing.
Sure. You got a map set up on the
Yeah,
back there.
a map of Korea.
Yeah.
Well, God love it, huh?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, where about? Can you point out about where you was?
Well, to the best of my knowledge, because you remember, as a non-com, you weren't in on the know.
Yes.
And anyway, here's the 38th parallel, and we came in from Sasebo, Japan, into the Busan harbor, and then we started north, and by rail, a little bit of
Yes.
it, and we thought that would be kind of neat, but it was a boxcar, and to relieve yourself, they just kicked a hole in the bottom of the boxcar, and you just sat leaning against the wall. And we got up in here, we went through Chuncheon, and it's a town just about 10 miles from the 38th parallel, and that was kind of a staging area. I never got into Seoul or Incheon, but the invasion at Incheon helped us considerably
yeah.
because it got behind the Koreans, the North Koreans, and it aided us because they went north. If you see up here, the Chinese had made a vow to push all the people they could find into the ocean at that point. Well, that didn't work for them. But you know, at one time they threw 500,000 Chinese
Yeah.
bodies into that. And here is Heartbreak Ridge, Old Baldy, the Triangle, and stuff like that. And it's the best of my knowledge, we were about 6 miles ahead of that, north.
Okay.
And we knew if we get caught, the only thing it could do is go further north. So we wanted to make sure that we were there. But there again, hills and valleys, you don't have a clue where you are.
Yeah.
You know,
right.
I drive out of Indianapolis and it'll say Carmel, 11 miles. They didn't have any signs like that.
Yeah.
All of the roads were just cut by bulldozers.
Yeah.
And when it would rain, monsoon rain, you would go and you'd see an arm and a leg sticking out of a North Korean soldier that had been killed. And they never, ever, our bulldozer would just cover them because they had no graves registration or things like that.
Yeah. Now, we was just south of where you pointed out, a little short ways. Our unit was just south of where you pointed out there.
Oh, were you?
Yeah.
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 Over on that side?
No,
more?
right.
On
Just
the west
just
side.
south.
Yeah. Okay.
That's the east side.
Yeah. But you know, we came across from Sasebo, Japan, on a ferry
Yeah.
overnight, and they gave us a grass mat to sleep on. And I wrote in the book, it'll never replace a Holiday Inn.
Right.
You know, that isn't good rest. But anyway, this country at that time was as ugly as any place I could imagine. You know, you take the coal mine country that they talk about where people live in shacks and things like that. There was no wooden houses, no paved roads, you know, none of that stuff. None of them had inside plumbing. And they used to save all their human waste for the next year's crop because that's what they used as fertilizer.
Yeah.
So every house that we saw had a small 4x4 building, lack of a better word, there, and they could then save their human waste in that building, come springtime, they would put it in their rice paddies. And we didn't see too many rice paddies because this was so mountainous. Up this perimeter was so mountainous
Yes,
that
yes.
you know nobody would say dig a foxhole
Yeah.
because you can't dig a foxhole in rocks.
Yeah. Right.
So that's what the map does. This map, if you'll notice, was 5053 and listed all the units that were there.
Yep.
Yeah, and you have to get a magnifying glass to find a lot of it.
Okay, Don, we got a couple of minutes yet. You want to talk about your book? You
Sure.
got a book coming out.
The first thing I want to
Or-
say is
I said Don, I meant Chuck.
that's right. You can call me anything. I've been called everything. But anyway, the book was not written by me, or it's not my book. It's our book. And the two young ladies here helped me so much. This Tammy Elmore, who is listed here, we were probably together 2 years and 4 months, joined at the hip practically to get all of this done. And I remember one Saturday, we started at 8 in the morning and finished at 10 after 5 that night, writing it down. And then once we got the outline, then Georgiana Coos, which is Tammy's best friend, was an English major. And she was a wordsmith. Tammy calls her a wordsmith and things like that because she has all the right words to put in the right places. And she started polishing it. So the picture shows, and you would think it was all about service-connected stuff.
Yeah.
It is not. There's 4 chapters that there's 4 chapters in there about the beginning of it, the capture, the being held, and the escape.
Yeah.
The rest of it was my childhood. I was born in St. Louis, Missouri, on November 6th in 1928, and I tell everybody I'll do the math. I'll be 85 in November. But the childhood, because of the Depression, we moved from St. Louis to Frankfort, Indiana, to Chicago, Illinois, seeking work. And so out of that came this book that talks about all of that young stuff. I become a street kid in Chicago, and it's not a good thing to be. And I was born just a little bit before the Valentine Day massacre in Chicago, because then it turned from the alcohol where they made their money to other kinds of devices.
Sure.
Chuck,
Yes,
it's
sir.
been a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you,
I'm
sir.
sorry it's over with so quick.
Well, yeah.
Chuck, thank you for your service. I
Yes, thank
appreciated
you
your
very
little
much.
story here.
Nice meeting you, Chuck.
Thank you very
Hope
much.
you enjoyed the show. Remember, freedom is not free. If you see a veteran or someone in uniform, just shake their hand, say thank you for your service. Thank you, and good night.
Access Fort Wayne offers reflections of our community. Production facilities provided by Access Fort Wayne are a service of the Allen County Public Library. The views and opinions expressed do not necessarily represent those of Access Fort Wayne, the Allen County Public Library, or any other supporting organizations. For more information about creating your own television program with Access Fort Wayne, call 421-1250.
Hello, and welcome to our show, The American Veteran. I'm Dale Parrish, your host. Carl Fowler is co-host. Also joining us today is Chuck Layton.